We finally entered the final episode of the whole series, Who Killed WCW? And in this episode, you get more of a corporate breakdown, essentially. You get more of the finances, you get more of, the opinions of corporate execs coming in from outside companies, i.e., WWF/WWE, and you get all that type of perspective. So it's no surprise, from the past episode in episode 3. Go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. What you got here was essentially a lot of that type of jargon, if you will. So number one, the episode kind of goes right into the big part of why things kind of crumbled in the end, is the AOL merger, which was a complete and utter disaster. AOL merging with Time Warner should have never happened, but it was allowed to happen, and government and politics. But as far as the decision making, AOL was 55% toward Time Warner's 45%. So essentially, what you got was AOL having the final say, and that 55-45 split took away Ted Turner. Ted Turner didn't have a say in nothing. He might have been the most powerful guy in the company, the richest guy in the company at the time, but he didn't have a say in anything because of that split. So once the merger happens, it's just a countdown at this point as to who's gonna, what's gonna happen to WCW, how are they gonna spin it, who's gonna buy it, etc. So they go on to talk about all the little corporate tricks that they were doing, because the corporate heads don't understand wrestling. I've explained this in the past videos. They just don't get it. They don't understand it. They don't understand how it's a huge driver for their business and how it could be a huge driver to their entire network. They don't understand it. It's just not their cup of tea. They play a lot of those executives like to, clutch their pearls. But in this situation, it was like, look, let's find a way we could just bury this company faster. So a lot of the people within WCW, especially Eric Bischoff being, chief of all of them, believe that a lot of the debt from Turner Network was parked on WCW's books. Oh, it's an easy way to bleed out a company and give it a slow death. Why not? So you can't prove it. It's hard to prove. You're not tapped into their accounting department on that level. It's only, a handful of people who probably are when you get that high up. But Eric Bischoff believes that's what was happening as well. So, you had that happening along with horrific creative control happening on the ground as far as Vince Russo is concerned. So these two things are going, these two terrible things are just clashing. And it's just no one is winning from this, especially the fans. No one. But the big shift was Eric Bischoff trying to purchase a company. He got to a point where he went to his guy, Brad Siegel, at the top and was like, look, Brad, you guys clearly don't want this shit. So can I at least entertain you in trying to sell this WCW brand while it's worth something? So Brad Siegel's like, I could sleep better at night. I don't have to worry about this thing anymore because I honestly don't really care about it as much as these guys do. So yeah, please, Eric, find a buyer. So Eric, to his credit, being again, Eric Bischoff is a hustling motherfucker. I gotta say it, man. He be hustling. He goes on to try to find a bidder. And he doesn't have experience in this. Just like when he took the role of WCW as an executive producer, he didn't have experience in the role, but he figured out how to do it. And to Eric's credit, he found some people to buy the WCW and to keep him as the head figure as far as a president, decision maker. And to Eric's credit, he did this. And I remember this. This is all the way back, probably early 2000, 2001. This is around the .com bust. So, everyone's going crazy thinking Y2K is going to destroy all the computers and the end of the world. And people are losing their shit at this time. And right around this time, WCW was losing money and hemorrhaging just about anything you could think of. And once that time happened, I do remember Eric Bischoff bringing in outside counsel to try to purchase WCW and being successful in getting an agreement. So I think I'm just going off the top of my head. I think it was a few $1 million that the company Fusion they came in with the funding and was able to secure another 60 plus $1 million to just grab WCW and be able to, Eric had it all planned out. To his credit, he had it all planned out. The dude didn't have experience in anything, but he's a go-getter. That's one thing about Eric. He's a go-getter. He gonna figure it out. And that's what he did. He secured the bag, the money, investors, and he also found a venue out in Las Vegas at the Hard Rock where he could have, recorded on the cheap, but had a very good something like similar to basically what TNA does today. They only record in select amount of places too. So Eric was ahead of the curve on that as well. So he had it all mapped out, but the whole deal was on contingent, only in contingency of keeping their current television placements, both on TBS and on TNT. And they had a deal from corporate up in AOL and all those weird guys. They had the deal, and that was contingent on Fusion's deal, far as getting the securing the funds, and everything was good. In no time, they bring in another guy, another corporate head to lead things. It's musical chairs at this point. When you're doing a merger, it's musical chairs. It's in and out. I've been a part of companies that's been, a part of mergers, and people come in, people come out, literally. And that's at the top as well. So in this situation, you get a new guy, a new boss now. His name's Jamie Kellner. He's got past experience, past experiences from his prior time at Fox. So, he's coming in there as this, hard ass, essentially, I know it all type of guy. And he makes it, to his credit, he makes it known off rip. I don't get this wrestling, and I don't want it. However, what that does is put the stake in the heart as far as WCW's existence is concerned. Because what happens once Jamie Kellner comes in and says, I don't want wrestling, get it off of my primetime television slots, it submarines, it sinks the Fusion deal. Because now the Fusion deal it can't exist anymore because it was only contingent on keeping those television spots. So once Jamie Kellner, oh man, there's no pun intended. I said Kilner. It's Kellner, but let's call him Kilner. Once Jamie Kilner killed the deal, it killed WCW. So once that happened, WCW was like a dead fish floating in a big pond somewhere. It was just, wasteland at that point. So once that happened, now it comes to the point of who's going to buy it. And at the middle of the night, probably with the help of some executives at the top of both AOL and the guy that they brought in from WWE to help facilitate the deal. I can't remember his name at the moment, but they sell the company for $4.3 million. I remember hearing this at the time when I was younger, because I don't know, I might be 16 or 17 at the time, or 18, I don't remember, but I was in high school. And even at that time, that number sounded crazy, like crazy low. $4.3 million. So even in the documentary, Eric Bischoff is saying, like, dude, we all think it was some inside job. There's no way that company, even in the current state it was at, as far as losing ratings, losing money on all these things, the brand itself, its content, its library, it's not worth no $4.3 million. It should be way more worth way more than that. And even when Eric had to secure the deal, and his investors had to come up with more money than that. So how in the world did Vince McMahon come in the middle of the night like Darth Vader to secure every bit of rights from Turner and AOL to sell WCW for pennies on a dollar, $4.3 million? Hell, Hogan could have bought WCW. For that, and it was just a painful death to know, and the wrestlers were talking about once they figured out how much it sold for, everyone figured out what it sold for, and just was like, it was a death knell. So, I will say this. Eric Bischoff, now you got to look at people who come out great after this. First of all, and who comes out bad. Eric Bischoff, you have to say, without a doubt, Eric Bischoff gets some kind of vindication. He may not get all vindicated from my generation, but when it comes to the younger generation who didn't live through all of this, they're going to probably look at Eric Bischoff a lot differently. And some of my generation, and I will say, just speaking for myself, I do look at Eric a lot differently after everything and how everything played out, essentially, and knowing a little bit more of what was actually happening behind the scenes. Because at that time, dirt sheets ain't what it is today. The internet wasn't what it was back then, and as far as how it is today, I mean, information is just coming by every minute to minute when it comes to news and just anything. But back then it was a lot slower, and you didn't have as many resources and sources to put things out. So you only seen what you saw on TV, essentially. And what you saw was two guys, Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, effing up and make a mess of things, and Hogan being too controlling and wanting to stay on top. And we've seen all those things. But on the Eric Bischoff side, we at least got to see what he was going through, and despite having to go through all of these challenges on the corporate side, dude did a lot of good things. Whether you love or hate him, that's the reality of it. He did some stuff, some great things, and beating Vince McMahon for 83 straight weeks has never been done before to this day. So, hats off to him. You got to give the devil his due. But as far as Vince Russo is concerned, he didn't really help his legacy at all. I know, I'm gonna give him credit for at least doing the documentary. I know they probably paid everyone, but still, he at least did it. And he's, spoke his piece. But I know he wanted to get some kind of levity from this situation, something similar to what Eric has, because Eric has levity. You could tell Eric has peace because Eric really, really put his life on the line for all of this. He he did what everything he could. He had some missteps, but as far as Vince Russo is concerned, he didn't help himself. Uh, the executives didn't help themselves either. It was just a mess. The whole thing was kind of just a sad, sad ending. Vince McMahon coming in and just picking the bones. I didn't even watch the whole angle as far as the invasion was concerned because you didn't have the top players. You didn't have the outsiders, the NWO, the Hogans and Nash and Hall, and you didn't have those guys. You didn't have Goldberg. You didn't have Sting. You didn't have the top players. So the invasion was boo boo. So I didn't watch it like that. I stayed in the know and I seen, moments and highlights here and there, but I didn't really care because it wasn't. And then on top of that, knowing the business and watching it as long as I've had, even at that point, and knowing Vince's tendencies, he's going to bury those guys. I knew he was going to bury a lot of those WCW guys and those ECW guys, and he did. He buried a lot of them. You know, it was just like a vulture just picking the bones. He got everything, won everything, but it wasn't enough. I have to job out all their top guys. I have to humiliate them, as you know. And shout out to Sting for saying, "Nah, I'm not going. I'll go somewhere else. I'll figure it out another way." So yeah, that was the painful end to a great, great brand in WCW. Uh, Without a doubt, I think when you go back to the question of who killed WCW, to me, clearly it was a combination of things. If you really want to give the political answer, but the main cause of it, in my opinion, was the corporate overlords. There was no synergy between corporate and the product. Just no synergy. When you have someone at the top, when you have a syndicate of people at the top who aren't a fan of said product, you don't have an advocate at the top like a Ted Turner who was stripped of power. When you don't have that advocate, it doesn't matter who's in charge, whether it's a Vince or Eric. It doesn't matter at that point because you're fighting a battle you're not going to win. You're just not. So the answer for me is corporate America. But yeah, that's it. If you didn't check out the other episodes, please check them out 1 through 4 now because this is the fourth episode. I'll see y'all again, man. See y'all soon.